Drill Sergeant Elena Vega was standing over me at 4:47 in the morning on a Thursday in October at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, in the middle of Third Platoon's bay, holding a piece of white paper she had removed from my personal locker approximately 14 seconds earlier. I was in physical training uniform. I was standing at parade rest. My eyes were forward, my hands were behind my back. Drill Sergeant Vega read the top line of the paper aloud to the platoon. She said, in the specific level voice that drill sergeants use when they are about to deliver something serious. Private Ashcroft, this is a Bank of America overdraft notice dated 6 days ago. It states that your joint checking account is negative $14,642. Care to explain, Private? I could not in that moment speak. I was 24 years old. I had been at basic combat training for 4 weeks. My husband Kyle, 31, back home in Columbia, South Carolina, had emptied our joint savings account, our joint checking, and had used my military power of attorney to open 2 additional lines of credit in my name. The last time I had checked our savings, before I shipped to Fort Jackson, we had $47,000. I was standing in a basic training bay in physical training uniform. I could not run home. I could not confront him. I could not do anything. Drill Sergeant Vega folded the overdraft notice. She said, quietly, Private Ashcroft, come with me. My husband is going to want to hear about this. Why I enlisted. My name is Claire Ashcroft. I am 24 years old. I am, at the time of this story, a private first class in the United States Army, 4 weeks into a 10-week basic combat training cycle at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, the largest basic training installation in the United States Army. I want to explain why a 24-year-old married woman from Columbia, South Carolina, enlisted in the Army in September of last year, because you cannot understand the rest of this story without understanding what I was trying to build for my family when I signed those enlistment papers. I grew up in Batesburg-Leesville, South Carolina, a small town of approximately 5,000 people, about 35 minutes west of Columbia. My father was a mechanic at a Ford dealership. My mother was a lunchroom worker at the elementary school. I have 3 younger brothers. I graduated from Batesburg-Leesville High School in 2018. I did not go to college. My family did not have the money. I married Kyle Ashcroft in 2022, when I was 22. Kyle was, at that time, 29. He worked as an assistant manager at a Lowe's home improvement in Columbia. We had been dating for 3 years. Kyle was, at the time we married, the specific kind of man I want to describe carefully, because it will matter for the rest of the story. Kyle Ashcroft was charming in the specific way that men who never left their hometown can be charming. He had a big laugh. He was popular at his high school. He was the kind of guy who bought a round for the table at a bar. He was, in every way that a person could be visible in the small circles of Batesburg, Leesville, and Columbia, present. He was also, per what I had learned quietly over 4 years of dating and 2 years of marriage, financially reckless. Kyle spent money. He spent it on a truck we could not afford, a used Chevy Silverado 1500 that he bought at auction in 2021 for $38,000 and financed at 14.9%. He spent it on a bass boat he used approximately 11 times a year. He spent it on golf clubs and hunting gear, and the specific bourbon he had decided at 28 was his signature drink. He did not, per our joint bank statements that I reviewed carefully every month, save any of it. I did. I want to be honest about this. The $47,000 that was in our joint savings account when I shipped to Fort Jackson was $47,000 that I had put there. I had, over 3 years of working 2 jobs, full-time at a local credit union and part-time waitressing on weekends, saved almost every dollar of my income, and had, over 3 years, built up that savings. The money was for the specific plan Kyle and I had agreed on in 2023. The plan was this. I would enlist in the Army. I would use the enlistment bonus and my military pay to add to our savings. After my initial 3-year commitment, I would use my post-9/11 GI Bill to attend the University of South Carolina to complete a bachelor's degree in nursing. Kyle would, during my 3-year enlistment, continue working at Lowe's and add to our savings from his end. We would, at the end of my initial commitment, have enough saved to buy a small house. Kyle had, in the specific ceremony of our kitchen table in the summer of 2023, promised me, twice, that he would handle the home front while I was serving. I signed my enlistment papers on September 4th of last year. I shipped to Fort Jackson on September 14th. I want to describe basic combat training briefly because you need to understand the environment I was in when the overdraft notice arrived. Basic training at Fort Jackson lasts 10 weeks. It is broken into 3 phases: the red phase, weeks 1 through 3, the white phase, weeks 4 through 6, and the blue phase, weeks 7 through 10. Trainees have, per Army policy, extremely limited access to personal communication during the first 6 weeks. During red phase, trainees receive 1 supervised phone call home. During white phase, trainees receive personal mail and can, under specific circumstances, receive additional phone calls at drill sergeant discretion. I was in week 4, the first week of white phase, when the overdraft notice was Federal Express to my platoon administrative office by the bank. I want to describe my platoon drill sergeant because she is the entire second half of this story. Drill Sergeant Elena Vega was 36 years old. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She had been in the Army for 15 years, had deployed twice to Afghanistan, and had been on drill sergeant duty at Fort Jackson for 18 months. She was, per every trainee in Third Platoon's assessment during the first 4 weeks, exactly the kind of drill sergeant they had feared before shipping. She was loud, she was precise, she was relentless, and she did not tolerate a single moment of self-pity from any trainee in her platoon. She was also, per what I would learn over the following 10 days, the fairest drill sergeant I had ever been in the presence of. She was married. She wore a small gold wedding band under her Army uniform ring. She did not talk about her husband during training. The only time any trainee in Third Platoon had heard her mention him was during week 2, when she had said, in the middle of a formation, that her husband had packed her lunch every morning for 11 years, and if any of you gentlemen think you're going to make it through the Army without a spouse who can make you a sandwich, you're already lost. That was, per my memory, the only personal thing she had said in 4 weeks. I did not know, until 4:47 a.m. on Thursday of week 4, that her husband's name was Marcus. I did not know, until 8:52 a.m. that same morning, that Marcus Vega was the branch manager of the Bank of America on Bragg Boulevard in Columbia, South Carolina. The exact branch where Kyle and I had held our joint accounts for the entirety of our marriage. That was the branch where Kyle had emptied our savings. That was the branch Marcus Vega had run for the previous 7 years. The morning of the overdraft. I want to walk you through the morning of Thursday, October 17th, because it is the morning the entire trajectory of my basic training changed. Reveille, the wake-up formation, was at 5 a.m., but Drill Sergeant Vega had, per the specific practice of Third Platoon, been in our bay at 4:45 every morning, conducting a personal locker inspection on approximately 3 trainees per day. She rotated the inspections. She did not warn anyone in advance. She used the 15 minutes before Reveille to conduct her checks and to speak, privately, with any trainee whose locker suggested a concern. At 4:45 a.m. on Thursday, October 17th, Drill Sergeant Vega opened my personal locker. At 4:46 a.m., she removed an envelope from the top shelf. At 4:47 a.m., she said my name. I was already on my feet in physical training uniform, the specific gray and black PT uniform issued to all Army trainees. I came to parade rest in front of my bunk. She said, "Private Ashcroft." I said, "Drill Sergeant," she said. "This envelope is dated 6 days ago. It is Federal Express from Bank of America. I signed for it at the administrative office when you were at rifle range on Monday. It was placed in your locker per platoon SOP. Have you opened it?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "No, Drill Sergeant. I was going to open it on Sunday during personal time." She said, "Private. Was there a reason you were waiting until Sunday to open a Federal Express envelope from your bank?" I said, "Drill Sergeant. I was afraid to open it, Drill Sergeant." She was silent for approximately 3 seconds. Then she said, "Private. May I open it now?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "Yes, Drill Sergeant." She opened the envelope. She read the notice. She was silent for approximately 8 seconds. Then she read the top line aloud, quietly, only loud enough for me and the trainees in the nearest 3 bunks to hear. She said, "Private Ashcroft, this is a Bank of America overdraft notice, dated 6 days ago. It states that your joint checking account is negative $14,642. Care to explain, Private? I could not in that moment speak. Drill Sergeant Vega folded the notice. She said, "Private, come with me." She walked me out of the bay. She walked me out of the barracks. She walked me across the drill pad to the small drill sergeant office building at the end of the company area. She unlocked her office. She sat me in a folding chair across from her desk. She said, "Private, I am going to ask you 3 questions. I need honest answers. Do you understand?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "Yes, Drill Sergeant." She said, "Question 1. When did you last check your joint bank account before you shipped to Fort Jackson?" I said, "Drill Sergeant. The morning I shipped, September 14th, it had approximately $47,000 in savings, plus about $3,000 in checking. My enlistment bonus had not yet been deposited." She said, "Question 2. Did you leave anyone with power of attorney over your accounts while you were at basic?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "Yes, Drill Sergeant. My husband Kyle. He has a general power of attorney I signed when we married. It was intended for tax filing purposes." She said, "Question 3. Have you spoken to your husband since Red Phase phone call in week 2? I said, "Drill Sergeant." "No, Drill Sergeant. He did not answer the phone during my scheduled week 2 call. I left a voicemail. He has not written a letter to me since I shipped. I have written him 4 times. Drill Sergeant Vega was silent for approximately 4 seconds. Then she said, "Private Ashcroft, have you heard the name Marcus Vega?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "No, Drill Sergeant." She said, "Private. Marcus Vega is my husband. He is the branch manager of the Bank of America on Bragg Boulevard in Columbia, South Carolina. I am aware from your enlistment records that Columbia is your home of record. I am aware, because you just told me, that your joint account is with Bank of America. I do not need to ask you which branch, because there is only one Bank of America on Bragg Boulevard, and it has been my husband's branch for 7 years. I stared at her. She said, "Private, I need to make a phone call to my husband. I need to make it right now, and I need your permission, as the account holder, to authorize him to review your account transactions. Do I have your permission?" I said, "Drill Sergeant." "Yes, Drill Sergeant." She picked up the phone on her desk. She dialed a number she apparently knew from memory. The phone rang twice. A voice answered, "Elena." Drill Sergeant Vega said, "Marcus, I need you to open the branch early today, before your 9 a.m. He needs to be there before you unlock the doors." Marcus Vega said, "Elena, who?" Drill Sergeant Vega said, "Marcus, I have a trainee in my office. Her name is Claire Ashcroft. Her husband is Kyle Ashcroft. They hold joint accounts at your branch. Their savings account was $47,000 on September 14th. Their checking is currently negative $14,642. My trainee has been at basic training for 4 weeks. She has not authorized any withdrawals. Do you understand what I am telling you?" Marcus Vega was silent for approximately 6 seconds. Then he said, "Elena, I know Kyle Ashcroft. He came into the branch 2 weeks ago and requested emergency access to the account under his wife's power of attorney. I approved the request personally. I did not know his wife was at basic training." Drill Sergeant Vega said, "Marcus, you know now." Marcus Vega said, "Elena, I'm going to the branch. I will call you back in 40 minutes. Do not let your trainee leave your office. And do not, under any circumstances, let her contact her husband. Do you understand me?" Drill Sergeant Vega said, "Marcus, understood." She hung up the phone. She looked at me. She said, "Private Ashcroft, do you have any questions?" I said, "Drill Sergeant, only one, Drill Sergeant." She said, "Private, ask it." I said, "Drill Sergeant, is my husband going to jail?" Drill Sergeant Vega folded her hands on her desk. She said, "Private, yes, he is." The bank manager and the fraud. I want to walk you through what Marcus Vega discovered over the next 6 hours, because it will matter for understanding the full scope of what my husband had done. Marcus Vega arrived at the Bank of America branch on Bragg Boulevard at 7:47 a.m. Eastern Time, on Thursday, October 17th. He unlocked the branch personally. He went directly to his office. He pulled up the Ashcroft joint account records. He called Drill Sergeant Vega at 8:52 a.m. The phone in her office rang. She answered on speaker so I could hear. Marcus Vega said, "Elena, I need to talk to Private Ashcroft directly." Drill Sergeant Vega said, Marcus, she is on speaker. Marcus Vega said, Private Ashcroft, good morning. I want to explain what I have found, and I want to explain it in a specific order. Are you ready? I said, sir, yes, sir. He said, Private, first. On September 20th, 6 days after you shipped to Fort Jackson, your husband Kyle Ashcroft came into this branch. He presented a general power of attorney document dated September 12, 2022, signed by you. That document authorized him to conduct financial transactions on your behalf. He requested to close your joint savings account and transfer all funds to a new individual checking account in his name only. The transferred amount was $47,213. I personally approved the transaction. I did not know at the time that you were at basic training. Kyle did not disclose that information. I did not for a moment speak. Marcus Vega continued. Private, second, on September 27th, Kyle returned to the branch. He used the general power of attorney a second time. He opened 2 additional credit accounts in your name. 1 line of credit for $25,000 and 1 personal loan for $15,000. Both were approved based on your credit score, which is excellent, and both were dispersed as cash withdrawals to Kyle's individual checking account. Total additional debt in your name, $40,000. I could not for a moment breathe. Marcus Vega said, Private, third. Kyle has spent approximately $61,000 of the combined $87,000 in the last 4 weeks. His transaction history shows purchases at a Chevrolet dealership in Lexington, at 2 jewelry stores, at multiple hotels in Charleston and Myrtle Beach, and, I am telling you this specifically, approximately $8,400 in charges at a restaurant in Columbia called the Wild Hare Bistro, which is a specific establishment that couples typically visit together. Drill Sergeant Vega said quietly, Marcus, who was he with? Marcus Vega said, Elena, I don't have surveillance access from other establishments, but I do have branch security footage. Kyle came into my branch on both September 20th and September 27th. He was accompanied on both occasions by a woman in her mid-20s. She was not identified on any account documents, but she was present in both transactions. Drill Sergeant Vega said, Marcus, what is your assessment? Marcus Vega said, Elena, my assessment is that Kyle Ashcroft has committed the following federal offenses. 1. Fraudulent use of a general power of attorney. 2. Wire fraud, based on interstate electronic transfers from a service member's Civil Relief Act protected account. 3. Bank fraud, based on the credit line and personal loan applications. 4. Potentially aggravated identity theft, based on the credit accounts opened using Private Ashcroft's credit profile without her knowledge. Total federal exposure, probably 8 to 12 years, and mandatory restitution of the full $87,000. He paused. He said, Elena, I have already, at 8:04 a.m., contacted the FBI field office in Columbia. I have already, at 8:17 a.m., contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office. I have already, at 8:31 a.m., placed a freeze on Kyle's individual account and on both credit lines. I have already, at 8:44 a.m., contacted the JAG Legal Assistance Office at Fort Jackson to notify them that Private Ashcroft will require legal assistance under SCRACHA today. And I have already, at 8:48 a.m., initiated the internal fraud recovery process at Bank of America to begin reversing the transactions from the initial account closure forward. Drill Sergeant Vega said, Marcus, how much of the $87,000 can be recovered? Marcus Vega said, Elena, under Bank of America's fraud protection policy, the $47,213 that was in the savings account will be restored to Private Ashcroft within 48 hours. The credit line and personal loan, because they were fraudulently obtained, will be voided in full. Private Ashcroft's credit will be restored. The $8,400 already spent at the Wild Hare Bistro and the $12,000 spent at the Chevrolet dealership will be pursued through federal restitution, but Bank of America will front the recovery, pending Kyle's prosecution. Effective this afternoon, Private Ashcroft will be made financially whole. I began to cry. I could not, at that moment, stop. Drill Sergeant Vega did not, in the specific way of drill sergeants, tell me to stop crying. She did not tell me to stand at attention. She did not tell me anything. She let me cry. Marcus Vega said quietly from the phone, Private, are you all right? I said, Sir, yes, sir, thank you, sir. He said, "Private. Your husband made the specific mistake that fraud investigators dream of. He committed a federal crime against a service member at a branch run by the husband of that service member's drill sergeant. I have been in banking for 19 years. This is the first time I have ever handled a fraud case that resolved itself before I finished my first cup of coffee." Drill Sergeant Vega, for the first time in the 4 weeks I had known her, laughed. It was a small laugh. It was quick. It was gone in less than a second. But it was a laugh. Marcus Vega said, "Elena, Kyle is going to be arrested at the Lowe's on Two Notch Road within the next 4 hours. Your trainee needs to be prepared for that. But I want to speak with her about one more thing first. Private Ashcroft, may I?" I said, "Sir?" "Yes, sir." He said, "Private. When Kyle came into the branch on September 20th and on September 27th, he was accompanied by a young woman. That young woman came into the branch with him a third time last Tuesday, 3 days ago. She was not present in either transaction, but she was in the lobby. When she gave her name to the receptionist for a promotional coffee giveaway, the receptionist entered her information into our marketing database." He paused. He said, "Her name is Ashley Whitfield. She is 23 years old. She lives at an apartment in Columbia. Her Facebook profile, which I have just reviewed, shows a photograph posted 11 days ago at the Wild Hair Bistro of her wearing what she describes in the caption as, quote, 'a gorgeous surprise gift from my future husband.' The photograph is of an engagement ring. The receipt for that engagement ring, per our records, was a $9,847 charge to Kyle Ashcroft's individual checking account on October 3rd. Drill Sergeant Vega, quietly, said, "Marcus, please tell me you already have a photograph of the ring." Marcus Vega said, "Elena, I have 3 photographs, from 3 different angles, because Ashley Whitfield posted them all on Facebook, publicly, with an engagement announcement to Kyle Ashcroft. Her post says, quote, 'His divorce will be final by Christmas. Can't wait to be Mrs. Kyle Ashcroft.' When I said, in a voice that was, per Drill Sergeant Vega's later observation, not a private's voice, 'Sir, my name is on that ring. The receipt shows my name, because it was purchased with money he stole from me.' Marcus Vega said, 'Private. That is exactly correct, and the FBI, when they arrest him, will be recovering the ring as evidence.' After I want to tell you what happened over the next 6 weeks, because it matters. Kyle Ashcroft was arrested at the Lowe's on Two Notch Road in Columbia, South Carolina, at 1:47 p.m. Eastern Time, on Thursday, October 17th, by 2 FBI agents from the Columbia field office. He was, per what his manager at Lowe's later told a Bank of America investigator, wearing his orange employee vest at the time of arrest. He was, per federal records, taken directly to the Richland County Detention Center, pending federal magistrate proceedings. Ashley Whitfield was interviewed by the FBI the following morning. She agreed to cooperate. She provided a full account of Kyle's actions dating back to July of last year, 2 months before I enlisted. She agreed to testify at Kyle's federal trial in exchange for immunity from prosecution on charges of receipt of stolen property. The engagement ring was recovered from her apartment. Ashley returned the ring to Bank of America the same day. It was, per the receipt Marcus Vega had already flagged, resold and the proceeds credited back to my account. The full $47,213 from my savings was restored to a new individual account in my name at Bank of America by 4:47 p.m., Friday, October 18th. Approximately 32 hours after Drill Sergeant Vega first read the overdraft notice. The fraudulent credit line and personal loan were voided by Bank of America's fraud team by Monday, October 21st. My credit was fully restored by Wednesday, October 23rd. The federal charges against Kyle were formally filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of South Carolina on Friday, October 24th. Kyle pleaded guilty in federal court on November 18th, approximately 5 weeks after his arrest. He was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution of the recovered amounts to Bank of America. He is currently serving his sentence at a low-security federal facility in Estill, South Carolina. Divorce papers were filed by my JAG attorney on the same day as the federal charges. The divorce was granted by default, per South Carolina family law, on December 17th, the specific date Ashley Whitfield had believed she was going to become Mrs. Kyle Ashcroft. I graduated from basic combat training on November 27th, Thanksgiving Day. I want to tell you about my graduation, because it matters for the ending of this story. Family attends basic training graduation at Fort Jackson. My mother, my father, and my 3 younger brothers drove up from Batesburg-Leesville. Marcus Vega attended in a civilian suit. Drill Sergeant Elena Vega marched 3rd Platoon onto the parade field as our senior drill sergeant. She stood, at the end of the ceremony, in the receiving line where trainees are officially released to their families for the first time in 10 weeks. When I reached her in the receiving line, Drill Sergeant Vega did not, per Army tradition, salute me. A drill sergeant does not salute a newly graduated private. She did something else. She shook my hand. She said quietly, "Private First Class Ashcroft. It has been my honor to train you." Marcus Vega, standing behind her in his civilian suit, saluted me anyway. He was a civilian. He was not required to salute me. He was, in fact, technically not authorized to salute me. He saluted me anyway. I saluted him back. My mother, standing next to Marcus in the receiving line, held my father's hand and cried, "I want to tell you where I am now. I am, at the time I am telling you this story, currently in my 2nd year of advanced individual training as a combat medic at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas. I will graduate in June. I have applied, per the specific mentorship advice of Drill Sergeant Elena Vega, to the Army's Nursing Corps commissioning program. If accepted, I will be commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the Army Nurse Corps at the end of my 3-year enlistment. I will attend nursing school at the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, Maryland, on the Army's dime. Drill Sergeant Elena Vega retired from drill sergeant duty in March. She was reassigned to the Army Recruiting Command as a sergeant first class. She is, per what she told me on our monthly phone calls, helping other young women make the same decision Private Ashcroft made, without the specific husband problems. Marcus Vega is still the branch manager of the Bank of America on Bragg Boulevard in Columbia. He has, per what Elena has told me, kept a specific photograph on his desk since November 27th of last year. The photograph is of me, in my Army dress uniform, at basic training graduation, standing between Elena and Marcus. Elena is not smiling in the photograph. She is a drill sergeant. She does not smile in official photographs. Marcus is smiling. He is holding a coffee cup in the photograph. The coffee cup has, printed on the side, the specific text, "World's Best Bank Manager." It was a gift. From me. I bought it, 6 weeks after my graduation, with the interest my restored savings had earned during that time. If you have ever been the young wife, or the young husband, or the young trainee who trusted someone to hold your future while you were building it, and who came home to find that someone had spent your future while you were gone, I want you to leave one word in the comments below. Just one word. The name of the bank, or the name of the branch, or the name of the person who caught the fraud before it swallowed you whole. Say the word. Because someone in this comment section is going to see your word, and they are going to remember that the person at the desk who signs the transactions is very often the specific person who has been quietly watching to protect you. And if this story reminded you that the country you serve, sometimes, sends the right drill sergeant to the right platoon at the right time, subscribe. I'll see you there.